I'm literally begging you to watch the entire video before leaving a comment. Since I did 2 clout chasing videos in a row, today, I'm going to get back into what I'm really interested in. Exploring dance in K-pop through a wider analytical lens. Mina's dancing is probably one of the most polarizing topics within the Twice fandom. Some think she's good, and some think she's painfully overrated. But are these opinions objective or even based on personal preference? This leads into the first topic I want to discuss. Dance in the K-pop fandom is treated less like something to enjoy or analyze, and more like ammunition to be used to further one's own petty agenda. Most of the time, I don't think these fans even formulate independent opinions. They just run to dance ranking videos from popular YouTube channels, or go on and on about a single remark by a highly paid choreographer. Of course, getting outside opinions in and of itself is not a bad thing. I probably watch a lot of the same K-pop dance channels as you. However, it is an issue when people stop thinking for themselves and parrot misinformation from these videos. I see it all the time, including in my own comment section. Just as an example, ever since Shaky Raindrop made her video about Heechan, I cannot escape the constant paragraphs about how efficient and elegant he is. Some go as far as to say that Heechan has the best technique in NCT, which is just flat out incorrect. It's clear that fans take the opinions of faceless strangers way too seriously. I can already hear some of you saying, but you're also a faceless stranger, and you're right. The entire point of this section is to say that the input of people like me should be taken with a grain of salt. I do want to mention, though, that I've actually shared a detailed profile of my dance background in an attempt to be more honest with you guys. This way, you have the option of clicking off my videos because I've only done half a year of street dance. On the other hand, you can decide that you're interested in hearing a perspective from someone who studied the Saketi method at a pre-professional level. What I really want is for fans to use their own eyes and ears to watch dancers, and to use their critical thinking skills to determine how seriously to take someone's opinion. On that note, I'm going to address the frequent misinformation that surrounds Mina and her dancing. Number 1. Mina has the best technique in Twice. First, I'll explain what actually constitutes good technique in dance. Technique can be defined as the correct way of using your body at a foundational level, making it possible to add on difficulty. Something that I find a lot of non-dancers don't understand is that the standard of good technique varies across different dance styles. What is good technique in ballet is not good technique in hip-hop. This standard is a little more difficult to discern in non-codified pole genres such as urban dance or contemporary, but you can generally figure it out just by watching. To tie this back to Mina, a lot of fans assume that simply doing ballet is enough to have good technique. This is totally untrue, and I would avoid trusting the opinion of any so-called dancer who perpetuates this myth. Having strong technique in ballet will help in similar styles like modern, jazz, or contemporary because you'll have developed proper muscle use, a good sense of line, proficiency at overlapping technical elements like turns, etc. However, idol dancing, which is influenced primarily by current urban dance, is too different from ballet for there to be significant overlap in technique. The most Mina has gained from her ballet background is a basic sense of coordination and body awareness. To get a better understanding of her idol dancing technique, I'm going to break down a few clips of her performances. Number 2. Mina is a really good dancer, she just lacks energy. Energy and power are indeed two things that she struggles to apply, but they are far from the only issues in her technique. A comment I often come across is that professionals appreciate Mina's dancing, while non-dancers don't understand that power and energy aren't the only things that make a good dancer. Of course there is more than one way to dance. Chungha is a perfect example of someone who performs with a more fluid and laid-back style, but she has built this style off of great foundational technique. From what I have seen, Mina's lack of energy comes from a physical inability to project strength. It's a bit ridiculous to act like only ignorant viewers criticize her technique. Number 3. Mina has good technique, she just focuses on fluidity and clean lines. A fluid dancer moves like water, no movements get stuck and transitions are smooth. This style is based on flexibility, well-developed isolations, and dynamic weight transitions. Just by comparing Hailey's style to Mina, we can see that they are very different. Mina restricts her range of motion, doesn't have good isolations, and keeps a very high center of gravity. She also doesn't have particularly clean lines, as you saw previously. I would say that her main barrier to achieving clean lines is the fact that all of her movements are very loose. This makes her arm and leg extensions messy. I find that the pathways between her arm positions are unclear as well. In my opinion, simply focusing on straightening her arms would improve Mina's arm lines because this would teach her body to apply strength in this area. Rather than calling her a fluid or clean dancer, I would describe her as a gentle dancer. Number 4. Momo and Mina are both equally good, they just have different styles. It's probably overkill to once again explain the weaknesses in Mina's technique, so I'll instead bring up an example of two main dancers to whom this logic actually applies. Let's use Jimin and J-Hope as an example. If we look solely at street dance, J-Hope is significantly better than Jimin. In my opinion, J-Hope is one of the top 3 dancers in the K-pop industry. This puts Jimin at a disadvantage because he doesn't have outstanding technique in any one style. However, when we look at idol dancing, J-Hope and Jimin are legitimately on equal footing. There are 2 reasons for this. Number 1. Some of BTS choreography is heavily influenced by contemporary. This allows Jimin to show his strengths in upward extension, floor work, and overall grace. In Spring Day and Fake Love, I would say that Jimin performed better than J-Hope from a technical standpoint. There is no comparison to this dynamic in Twice because none of their choreography is influenced by ballet. Number 2. Jimin is still a hip-hop dancer. A lot of people forget that Jimin was a popper before he was a modern dancer. Although he has more of a tendency to miss details than J-Hope or even Jungkook, he is fully capable of performing choreography like Fire or Mic Drop. His experience in modern dancing serves to add flavor to his performance, but it is not the sole base of his technique. Mina's technique, on the other hand, is almost entirely based in ballet with a couple years doing modern. She never developed strong technique in the foundational styles that make up idol dancing. The logic of they just have different styles really only works when watching Mina and Momo do contemporary. Mina has better elongation and balletic lines while Momo has better strength and control. Now that we have addressed some common misconceptions, let's take a look at something that I haven't seen anyone address. Did Mina actually develop strong ballet technique? Something to note is that ballet technique is so incredibly specific that it's nearly impossible to become good unless you enter a pre-professional environment. As far as I know, Mina only did ballet as a hobby, so it's understandable that her foundation is not that strong. There are a couple things that immediately stick out to me. First, Mina's shoulders are very high. In order to correct this, she would have to use her back muscles to pull her scapulus down and out. Second, neither her supporting nor working knee fully straighten. Related to this, I noticed that she bends her knee slightly every time she prepares to go on point. This is a very common issue that arises when ballet students first learn to do peaks. There is a very big distance between being on flat and being on point, so it's natural to try to close that distance by bending your knee. What you actually have to do is focus on pushing off of your back foot and bringing the opposite side of your back with you. That way, you have enough momentum to get on point with a straight knee. The biggest and most dangerous issue I'm seeing is that Mina does not go fully on her box. You should never try turning in this alignment because it's very unstable. It seems like she just needs to develop more strength and control in her feet. Another noticeable thing about Mina's dancing is that she is unable to maintain her turnout. This is true throughout the entire manege, but it's especially obvious when looking at her final arabesque. Her foot is not just parallel, but it's actually pronated. Mina has some other more minor issues like arm tension and letting her arabesque fall out to the side, but her posture, turnout, and line from leg to foot show me that she never grasped the technical foundations of ballet. This isn't Mina's fault by any means, nor is it particularly unusual. She just looks like a typical Japanese ballet student who takes ballet lessons at a casual school. Teachers likely pushed her on point too early and focused on variations rather than building technique with a set syllabus. Judging by where she was in her training by that age, she probably would not have been able to become a professional ballet dancer. I honestly think it's a little disrespectful to actual pre-professional ballet students to say otherwise. As a continuation of this, I thought it would be interesting to see if Mina could have gotten a professional career if she had received good training. To do this, I will be looking at her physical characteristics and body type. A lot of non-dancers assume that the only physical requirement to become a ballet dancer is to be skinny. In reality, ballet dancers have to fit a very narrow functional mold in order to succeed. Weight and size are honestly the least important out of all these requirements. The physical features I will be looking at are foot arch, knee extension, turnout, range of motion, body proportions, and overall aesthetic. First, what is considered a good foot in ballet? Ideally, your foot will create a smooth line from your shin bone to the top of your arch, and your foot will make a dramatic concave curve. As with every one of these standards, it's partially aesthetic, and partially functional. The fact that teachers look for extreme foot flexibility has to do with aesthetics, but without a good arch, you cannot get over your box when working in point shoes. I've heard some people say that Mina has bad feet, but I actually don't think that's true. She just never learned how to use them properly. As we see in this screenshot, her arch is actually decent. I think there was potential that could have been developed with proper foot exercises. Next, what do I mean by knee extension? In ballet, the ideal leg line involves a hyperextended knee. Occasionally, dancers will find it impossible to fully stretch their knees. While hypoextension can usually be resolved by stretching and strengthening, it is sometimes caused by tight ligaments which should not be stretched. Initially, it seems like Mina is unable to straighten her knees, but this is actually an issue of control. Mina has slight hyperextension. Let's move on to turnout. Turnout is an outward rotation of the leg, more specifically, from the hip, ankle, and knee or tibia. Although ligament flexibility and bone structure determine the maximum rotation you are capable of, your turnout can be improved by stretching and strengthening various muscles. Because of this, it's difficult to measure Mina's turnout as she has not been trained to use her muscles properly. However, I've personally noticed that dancers with a lot of turnout but poor training tend to stand with outward rotation and only go parallel when dancing. Mina seems to struggle with turnout even when standing still, so I don't think this is the case with her. If I had to guess, I'd say that she has about 50 degrees of turnout total on each leg, which would hold her back considerably while pursuing a professional career. Similarly to turnout, range of motion is pretty difficult to check, so I'll have to work off clues. If Mina were hypermobile, she would probably have major issues controlling her posture with her level of technique. Mina has stiffness in her shoulders and struggles with fluidity in her torso and hips. However, she seems to have decent back flexibility, and the fact that she has retained a lot of her range of motion tells me that flexibility is not unnatural to her. Overall, I'd say that she has average to slightly below average range of motion. The ideal proportions for a ballet dancer are long legs and arms, a short torso, a long neck, and small head. As with most Japanese body types, Mina doesn't fit these standards. She has a long torso and proportionate legs and arms. On the bright side, she has a long neck and a small head. Also, body proportions are the least important out of everything I've discussed so far. My definition of overall aesthetic is probably closer to what most people imagine as being the standards of ballet. Are you thin? Are you tall enough? Are you pretty? Mina obviously meets the first and third requirements, and I think she is tall enough for employment as long as she stays in Japan. In conclusion, I don't think that Mina had any structural issues big enough to stop her from a career. If she had pursued ballet seriously and gotten good instruction, I think she could have found employment in Japan. Unfortunately, doing ballet only as a hobby means that Mina trained a lot of bad habits into herself and never achieved proper body control. I actually think that if she had developed good ballet technique, her transition to idol dancing would have been easier. Finally, I want to ask this question: why was it so hard for Mina to transition into idol dancing? Why is she still struggling to grasp the technique? The answer to these questions highlights my main complaint regarding the Japanese ballet education system. Ballet culture in Japan is different from typical Western ballet culture in a couple ways. Most little girls take ballet lessons with no intention of pursuing a professional career. Mothers pay for their daughters' lessons for them to develop good posture and elegant feminine movements that indicate an elevated social status. Because these students make up the majority, especially during elementary school, studios aren't incentivized to prepare students for a professional career. In fact, Japan doesn't have any mandatory teaching qualifications, most studios don't follow a syllabus, and exams are rarely required. In contradiction to the elitist attitude surrounding this art form, studios take a surprisingly egalitarian approach to training ballet students. Anyone, no matter their body type, can learn ballet. In Japan, ballet dancers train under a curriculum that almost completely severs their connection to the rest of the dance world. There aren't jazz tap ballet studios or all-encompassing dance competitions like in North America. For the average student, you only have two choices: join a ballet school, where contemporary will be as far as you go into any different genre, or attend a general dance school that teaches a range of styles from ballet to hip-hop. Although it's limiting, training ballet dancers this way actually makes quite a lot of sense if you're envisioning your students getting company contracts in Japan. International ballet companies are steadily incorporating more and more dance styles into their repertoire, but companies here still perform mostly classical choreography. If a student wants to make it abroad, they'll typically attend a vocational school in that country first, which will make them versatile enough for a career. The problem I have with this system is that it locks ballet students into a path where they only have one career option. Let's take an imaginary scenario. You want to become a ballet dancer, so at age 5, you join your local ballet school. It's not the best in the country, and like most other schools, it doesn't follow a method or require exams. However, it has a good reputation and a consistent record of getting students into professional companies. You continue training there, and you are fully committed by age 12. You've started taking a once-a-week contemporary class. It's all going well until at the age of 14, you realize you got unlucky with your genetics. You have limited turnout and a poor range of motion. As much as you still long for a professional career in ballet, you have no chance of making it, and you quit. Now, what do? You've developed great ballet technique, but you can't pursue that professionally. You aim for a career in the commercial industry, but those once-a-week contemporary classes weren't enough to bring you up to par with students from those general dance studios. In the end, you're completely trapped. This is a situation I've seen firsthand many times. While North American kids can often adapt to a commercial career path after ballet stops being an option, Japanese ballet students are completely underprepared to make such a switch. Russia can get away with bringing up ballet students this way because they are incredibly selective with who they train. If you have bad feet, studios won't even give you a chance. If the only people who get locked into the ballet system are those who have definite potential as professionals, there's nothing wrong with closing them off from other styles. They have no need for them. My issue is that Japan is combining a European ballet education system with a North American approach to participation. This is a recipe for complete disaster. A Japanese student with bad feet would get a high level of training, make it to age 16, and then quit with nowhere else to look for a professional dance career. The way I see it, Japan has three options. 1. Companies somehow overhaul all of their ridiculously strict aesthetic and functional body standards, which would never happen. 2. Japan adopts a European philosophy in their ballet education system and refuses entry to those who don't fit certain standards. Or 3. They realize that they can't do the former because they need money, and they put effort into training real versatility into their ballet dancers from a young age. All I want Japanese ballet studios to do is to teach their students jazz. I'm not asking for them to become North American. There's no reason to establish commercial dance competitions or change Japanese standards of technique and stylistic categories to fit the American standard. My goal is simply to ensure that ballet students become versatile so that they have realistic career options during their teenage years. Some of you may be wondering, why jazz? Why not hip hop or modern? Jazz, in my opinion, is the perfect complementary dance style for ballet students because it pushes them just far enough out of their comfort zone without introducing contradictory information. With hip hop, the standards for posture, extensions, and overall aesthetic are the polar opposite of what is taught in ballet. Modern wouldn't be terrible, but it's a little too close to ballet to be a good gateway to other dance styles. With jazz, you get the lower center of gravity, the lateral extension, the dynamic transitions, the locked yet fluid movements, all while being able to apply the core elements of ballet technique. As for how to get the parents on board, I'll leave that to the studios themselves. I firmly believe that if Mina had taken jazz from a young age, her transition to idol dancing would have been easier. Being a versatile dancer with a sense of street style movement, her technique could have been adapted in a very short amount of time. I want these ballet studios to change, not because of a single idol, but because the Japanese ballet world is so full of contradictory systems and values that it's actually ridiculous. The way things are, forcing students to choose a path where it is ballet or nothing isn't fair. If teachers really care about their students' future careers, they'll make them versatile. Hundreds of teenagers have to grapple with the reality that they don't meet the rigid standards of the modern ballet world. When they end up at this point in their training, I want them to have a gateway style that will open up another road to a career in dance.